guys, welcome to episode 7 of Santa Capricia. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of, well, two different things. We're going to be working on retail area predominantly with a little bit of residential, although a lot of that I've actually built off camera, so I'm not going to be showing you too much of that, and a lot of that is fairly repetitive work as well. And the second half of the video is going to be a slightly different kind of build. We'll talk about that in a little while actually, but it's a little bit more unusual, kind of a unique sort of thing which I've been working on the past few days. And some people might guess what that is, because I've put some posts out in regards to that particular thing that I've been building, but yeah, so you'll see that shortly. What I'm really doing at the moment is putting down a new mall, a shopping mall, and this is in the North Kennet area of the city, which was the area that I was building in the last episode, predominantly residential area. So this shopping mall, there's not been too many shopping malls in the city. I built one a few episodes back, which was in a different part of the city. This is really in the kind of the retail area of North Kennet itself, and it's fairly big, a sort of medium-sized shopping mall, not huge, certainly not by American standards big, but it's nevertheless a reasonable size sort of mall. Once again, with these shopping malls, I spent ages building the car parks and messing around with the sort of ground textures and things like that, so I think with the shopping malls it's hard to keep them looking completely unique, but I suppose it doesn't really matter because the shopping malls tend to be fairly generic. You know, they could kind of be anywhere in the world really, a lot of these sort of buildings, but they're good for fillers, and they are big. They do cover a large area, so they're good at filling up your city. And of course America has a lot of these, so I want to try and put a few more of these down before I leave North Kennet. In relation to the area of North Kennet, it's been sort of the area that I've been working on since I've started the series, and this is probably going to be the last, or really I think it is going to be the last episode now that I concentrate on this area. I kind of think there might be another one I'll be doing, possibly in a few episodes time, but I think I want to try something a bit different next time. So I'm going to be hopefully going to a different part of town, a new part of town, or at least a part of town that I haven't really built much in at present. So I'm aware that I don't want to kind of exhaust my inspiration in this area, so I think it's quite good to sort of move around town a bit just to keep it fresh. That's something that I'm aware of, just keeping your ideas fresh, your inspiration fresh. You don't want to run out of steam halfway through with something like this. It can be quite daunting when you look at the size of the map and you realise you've only filled up about a fifth of the map and you've spent 2 months building. It can be slightly disconcerting when you see that, but yeah. So I think in that respect, I probably will go to a different area next time. But back to the build. So I'm doing a little McDonald's here, and putting down some sort of terraces, and this is going to be a little play area for kids. Just filling out the area again, trying to make the sort of retail places that you would see. And I'm not worried that obviously McDonald's is completely, it's a very well-known brand. I'm not really going for sort of generic brands here in the city. I want the city to look realistic, so there are going to be familiar brands, familiar logos popping up all over the place. Santa Capricia is a classic American city. I'm not going for something that's unique in that respect, so I'm going to be borrowing bits of cities here and there, and obviously McDonald's and Burger King and everything else is going to be making an appearance in Santa Capricia. I'm not really sort of precious about that. So yeah, some outdoor tables, because obviously the city is a sunny place. Yeah, it has hot weather here. At the moment in the UK, it's been raining, it feels like, non-stop for about 6 months. And in fact, it's quite nice to build a sunny city. It's probably one of the reasons maybe I'm building a city in California rather than one in Europe or something, because it gives me a break from the monotonous grey clouds which seem to perpetually cover this country. But yeah, enough moaning about Britain. Yeah, these McDonald's sort of signs and things, just adding those in. You know, all kind of these little details all sort of make the city pop into life a bit more. One thing I've been really trying to get into is the PO, using PO to sort of build my assets and change some of the buildings and sort of look at the props, changing those into editable props as well. So I've really been exploring PO a lot more the last sort of couple of weeks, and the city now resembles a kind of, well, when you go into PO mode, put it this way, the city is covered in little tiny PO X's everywhere, or crosses everywhere. It's absolutely covered in them, which is fine, but it can be a bit distracting trying to even find certain assets. You can see here how many little crosses there are. I've got literally thousands of the things now. So I don't know how that's going to affect the lag or the running of the game. At the moment it seems to be fine. It's a little bit fits and starts with this city. It tends to be, sometimes it's quite slow and other times it's really good and really quick. So I don't know why that would be. Possibly depends on the position of the camera and things like that, but I don't know if PO is having an effect or whether it's actually improving the FPS. But at the moment, as I say, it seems to be fine. So I'm carrying on as I've been doing it the last few weeks now using PO. I built this little sort of fence, and so these walls are all PO objects as well, because I can just edit them a lot easier and I can plant them into position much better. And again, with these little kind of details here, making gates and fences and stuff, no way I could have done this really before. And with PO, it's giving me the flexibility to just do this, copy and paste it, and rotate it into position. Yeah, and it just gives you a little bit extra detail, which I think looks really good. And again, with these sort of these vehicles are actually just props that have been placed into position, so I can move the whole thing. I'm trying to kind of keep my workflow fairly streamlined in conjunction with using PO. Right, so now we're getting into the second part of the video, which is the interesting part, I guess, because it's a little bit different. I've been considering a long time about doing some kind of canals or rainwater canals, rainwater drainage channels. In LA in particular, I don't know if you have them in San Diego as much, but certainly in LA there are these big dry canals or riverbeds, concrete canals, that have been built so that any kind of rainwater runoff is then diverted straight through the city and then out into the ocean. And the reason for that is because there's not really sort of, I don't know, in LA there's natural rivers, or the rivers that were there have been covered up and tarmacked over. So any kind of rain that falls in the mountains is going to either back up in the city and flood it, or you have to have some way of getting the rainwater out, which is why these big channels have been built. And they're all over LA, and they are a real feature of the city. Now, with Santa Capricia, first of all, I'm not trying to replicate LA. In fact, I haven't even looked at the rainwater channels on Google Maps. I'm designing my own, and they're much smaller scale than the LA ones, because in essence, Santa Capricia is a much smaller city. And also the mountains are fairly close to the ocean, so I don't need huge concrete canals joining, running out to where the sea is. I can keep the canals fairly small, or the rainwater channels fairly small. I decided that PO was the only way to go with this, because this is quite a bespoke build. It's not something that I could use. I couldn't use the canals on the vanilla game. They just didn't look right. They looked too big or too deep, and they didn't give me the sort of detail that I wanted to get. So what I'm doing is using just a concrete slab. I'm not even sure what this asset was. I think it was just a concrete floor slab or something like that, maybe a kind of container warehouse sort of floor or something, and then editing that in PO to give me this kind of like a channel with these kind of angled sides to it. And then the texture works quite well because I've kind of offset these channels so it looks like you've got this build up of debris where you get the angle meeting the floor of the channel. So I'm actually using the textures here to try and create the illusion of, you know, this channel looking like it's often, you know, is flooded. I'm not putting any water, certainly in these channels. I might put some water in maybe further down the line, further down the channel, closer to the ocean, but at the moment these are just dry and they don't actually obviously serve any real function. You can't actually put water in them, they're not going to work like that, but they still look like they do something. I guess you could technically flood the area or put a little sort of water spawn point further up and let it trickle through, because the terrain itself has been lowered. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be actually filling them up. I mean, I might try that. It could be quite interesting to do that, but I don't have any plans at this stage to put water into those. And they are running really through the whole of North Kennet, so a lot of these roads will then become bridges or just span over the channels, or certainly look like they span over the tunnels. What I'm doing is making a kind of standardized prop, which is this one, and then using the terraforming network to just push the ground down and also to pull it up either side. So there's actually 3 networks there running next to the channel. But then also I've been building these kind of PO object bridge sections, which I can then import and copy and paste and put them against the road. So again, it gives the impression that these channels are running underneath the roads. It's all a cheat, but it looks like it functions as a kind of bridge. So this is just me working out how to build it. I've got these little kind of, I don't know what you'd call these really, but these are like sort of little breakwater sections that just sit in the channel, and I guess they're designed to stop debris and stuff like that getting clogged up, and they're just sitting underneath the bridge there. And yeah, so just copying these across. I mean, PO gives me the flexibility to do that now, and if you just align them all together, get the align height together, then that gives you that sets them out correctly. And this is then me just putting this kind of little grill detail in. So I just thought, well, if you've got these bridges, there'd probably be some kind of mesh or something there to stop big bits of debris and branches and stuff washing through. And again, just sliding that underneath, and then that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm going to build a little kind of wall on top just to stop people from falling off the bridge. But then once I've done that, that's it. I can just copy and paste this detail and use that on pretty much all of the other channels where the road spans over. And it generally worked pretty well. I wasn't sure, to be honest, when I started doing these channels, quite how I was going to do it. I mean, I had a kind of vision in my head how I was going to do it, and that's pretty much played out correctly. I mean, there was a couple of goes I did before I properly recorded this, where I was messing around with a slightly different channel section which wasn't working as well, and then I kind of stumbled across this one, which really did seem to work well for the rainwater channels and the bridge. I mean, it's the same section that I'm using as the bridge for the channel, and so I ended up recording that version of it. So this is the version, the sort of third version, I guess, is what you're seeing on the video today. These are little sort of bollard details that just become the kind of supports for the walls. So I really wanted to show you a little bit more detail in terms of how I'm going about using PO, because I thought that might be quite interesting. I've been kind of skipping through a lot of the build in this video. On the other stuff, the other part of the the buildings and everything else, I've been skipping through a lot of that. And the reason for that is because a lot of that you've seen before, but this is a bit different. So that's why I wanted to focus on this today, and also give you a little kind of sense of how I'm working with PO, because as I say, PO is becoming a real, virtually every part of the city now has got some kind of PO edited asset that's being bought in, whether it's walls or parts of the floor, textures, it could just be props that have been converted, and buildings as well, which I'm also editing now. So it's a really flexible tool. So I would suggest anybody out there that's a little bit wary of it, do try and use it. There are some really good tutorials out there, and I would certainly recommend, if you look at Strict Toaster, one of his videos, he does a couple, I think, on PO, working out how to use PO, and it's quite good because he works, because when he recorded that, he was a real beginner with PO, so it's seeing how he uses it and how the different keys and the different options you've got there. But as I say, very flexible. I wasn't sure here with the channel how far to go up the side of the hill. I think probably I went a bit too far up, to be honest, and probably in the future I'm not going to go up this high. But I wanted, again, to give the illusion that these channels are there sort of sitting on the hillside in a natural kind of valley. And again, you have where the rainwater runs off, you get a more sort of green vegetation around where the channels are. And yeah, so it was quite a tricky sort of part. That was one reason maybe not to do this so much, because when you're working on the angles, it gets really tricky with all the PO assets to get them sort of working at the correct angle and so forth. And again, messing around with the ground just wasn't working, so I ended up using some ploppable gravel, ploppable ground, just to try and fill the gaps, which generally worked okay. And then once I put that in, I covered the edge with more plants, which is the go-to solution if you've got gaps and holes and things. Just cover it up with trees. That's what I suggest. So we are coming towards the end of this episode. Once again, it's gone by in a flash, and I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. You can see this has been quite a long build. These channels have been taking a long time, but they are quite an important feature in this part of the city, so I don't mind that they've taken the time they've taken. But until next time, do subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. I'm going to bid you farewell, and hope to see you next time, and leave you with some cinematics.